Hi, everybody. Welcome to Kindred Skulls. I'm Matt Freese, and today we don't have Nick or Greg. They're both swamped. So we brought in a special guest, one of our friends who we've been talking about ball with for a very long time online. Randy, if you're on Twitter, you might have seen him at yes, quite. There's four M's in the there. So it's really a great handle to kind of describe via an audio medium. Randy, how we doing today?
I am doing just swell. And did you just say your name's Matt Freeze? It's not Fry. It's not Fries.
No, it's not Fries. So I always give my handle as Fries Football because that's how it's spelled, but it is technically pronounced Freeze. Like I kind of am in a place with it in my life where, it's something where you read it on paper, right? And you're like, no, it can't be Fries. So people come up with like Freeze or something, which is close, but it's not quite there. So I just kind of have leaned into it because why not? I mean, it's pretty fine. And for people I talk with in real life, like they call me Freeze, but I really don't care about the internet, so it's all good.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, Randy, welcome on the pod. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
What's up? I'm glad to be back on the circuit. It's been a little bit since the last football the podcast episode. So I've been missing talking about football with you guys, but happy to be back. Like you said, handle on football on Twitter is yes, quite indistinct number of M's. I don't know. Throw a few on there. You'll probably find it. Um, wouldn't judge my takes on there too harshly. I like to play both sides of the coin, Kirk hater and Kirk lover. That's the big divide on Vikings Twitter, and I like to play both sides, so I stay on top. But big football fan, entire life, diehard Vikings fan, bleed purple. Am actually named Randy. Um, born in '98, named after Moss, Cunningham,
The greatest wide
John
receiver of all time,
Randall.
man.
Yep, Randall McDaniel. There was an absurd number of Randys or Randalls on that team. Statistically, an anomaly. Just like it is a statistical anomaly for a team to be as good as the Vikings are historically and have never won a championship. So, perfect.
Yeah, you gotta love the lack of a Super Bowl. Really, that's what keeps us coming back year after year after year. So we'll flip it over because we got a lot of content to get into today. Obviously, the Vikings had a draft. Nick and Greg, unfortunately, not able to join us this week, but we will be back further on once we get to tape review. I've watched half of like what I intend to for Jordan Addison, so I haven't gotten all the way there, and I haven't watched anything on any of the other prospects, so I'm kind of fresh going into this, and a lot of my impressions are just based off of what I've heard pre-draft, right, and a little bit of some information I've gathered post draft on these guys, but I haven't really gone deep into the tape, so it's kind of a raw initial impression as a fan for me on this one. And we'll start it off, with the number 23 overall pick. The Vikings took Jordan Addison. There was a lot of talk around this pick whether the Vikings would try to trade up for a quarterback. Obviously, with three quarterbacks going in the top four, and the only quarterbacks that I wanted going in the top four, right? I wasn't huge on Will Levis. I think I would have accepted it if the Vikings did it. I think there was a logical argument to be made to trade up for Will Levis if you were a little Will Levis fan, but that wasn't me. So I'm not too concerned about the fact that they passed on him at 23 either in terms of that decision. The cost to go up to 3 was just way too much. We saw what the Texans paid to go up from 12 to 3. You have to think that the Vikings would have had to add at least another first onto that. And I just don't think they had the capital to beat out what the Texans did, especially considering the Cardinals then moved back up, right? The Cardinals didn't want to go too far down, so they lost out on Paris Johnson. They had to move back up. So they probably don't go all the way down to 23. So with that being said, we got Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC, obviously, who was in the great Pitt team in 2021, where he won the Blitnikoff Award as the best receiver in college football. He's 21 years old and will be 21 years old going into the NFL season. Just in terms of background, right, the big question with Addison is his size. He's 5'11", and weighed in at 171 in the combine, which is an abnormal size for a player. Randy, I know you watched him prior to the combine. You've probably gotten pretty decent tape exposure. What do you think of the Addison pick? What do you think of the Addison pick in general? And tell us a bit about who he is as a player.
Yeah, it's no shock that I was a big fan of his. I probably, much like most people on draft Twitter, did about 10,000 mock drafts on PFF, Pro Football Network, everything. My Addison was always my realistic favorite choice. Of course, I wanted a quarterback. I actually, I would have thought probably we were going to take Will Levis at 23. I think I sent you who I thought were
Yeah.
first round caliber players, and I actually left him off. To me, he's like a late first rounder, early second, so I wouldn't have had any problem taking a shot at 23. But not super upset that we didn't take him. It would have been exciting to get new blood in town, but of everyone on the board, Addison was probably my guy. I was a big fan throughout the entire process. I think I had him as my number 3 receiver. I did have Flowers ahead of him. I think they're pretty similar guys. Flowers just has a little more juice on him, a little shiftier. But I loved Addison. I mean, like I said, there were him, JSN, and Flowers are the 3 guys I would say were my first round wide receiver prospects, no question. They're actually I think the only 3 guys I had as first round wide receivers. But Addison, I had to argue with people in the offseason who thought there was no chance we'd take a wide receiver in the draft no matter what, or in the first couple rounds because we liked Osborne so much, or we'd rather go free agency. But it's just such a positional value thing that it's hard to say. I mean, say no to wide receiver. I get the argument to go corner because that's another one. It's a big positional value gain to have on a young, cheap contract. But it just that's where it depends on prospects rather than the position. Because if they're like me and had 3 wide receivers, or even include Johnson who went a little higher, if those are your guys who you think are first rounders, and then you have a few corners who you think are first, second, third round guys, you go wide receiver first, and then you go back and get a corner because you think it's a deeper class. So I'm a big fan of the Addison pick. Little started on his faults because of course, there's going to be a whole bunch of things to get excited about with a guy who has a highlight tape, 20 minutes long in college as a wide receiver. But of course, the big one is weight, especially compared to his athleticism and his testing numbers. It's one of those things where I think we're really just entering a new age of NFL football where you're going to get a lot of positions who are going to have outliers or guys who'd be outliers in the past. So I think 2, 3, 5 years down the line, it's not going to be as surprising seeing guys like that succeed. I'd look at edge rushers, how it was pretty out there to see a guy who is 6', 6'1", 240, screaming off the edge as a Pro Bowler. But we get guys like Hassan Reddick who are doing it, and then we get guys like Nolan Smith who didn't go as high as we thought, but we're still pretty much unanimously first round guys. I see the same thing with Addison, where you get someone like Devonta Smith who took College World by storm and actually weighed lighter. He's I think a little taller, 6 feet compared to 5'11", and a little lighter. I think he weighed in 166 instead of 171 like Addison. And I think they play pretty similarly. I mean, Devonta was my number 1 receiver that year, no question. I loved him. So he's the better prospect. But he's a guy I'd look to in terms of Addison, in terms of calming down about his testing numbers and weight, because I don't think Devonta Smith is a low 4.4 or a 4.3 guy.
No.
I think if he ran, he would have ran pretty much exactly like Jordan Addison. I think that's exactly what shows up on tape. So I'm not too worried about it. I think we're going to see. We saw Josh Downs, who was someone posted a list of like 25 receivers who all ran in the high 4.4s or higher and weighed less than 175. And it was just a list of all terrible receivers. But what jumped out to me was Addison, Josh Downs, and Hank Dell were all from this year on that list. So I'm just thinking maybe that's just where the league is going. Lighter guys can hang now at wide receiver, but we shall see.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because the Vikings, throughout this draft, and we'll get to the other players, but like Jay Ward and Mekhi Blackmon are also very light players for their positions traditionally, right? Mekhi Blackmon's also in the 170s as a corner, and Jay Ward was in the 180s as a 6-foot tall safety, right? So that's very light for both of those positions. The Vikings clearly didn't prioritize the weight. For me, with the Addison pick, if you listen to the show Nick and I did after they picked Addison as kind of an instant reaction, that I wasn't the biggest fan of the pick at the time. And then last week's show with Luke, I argued against taking Jordan Addison at 23 with Luke, who was a proponent of taking Addison at 23, right? So for me, I guess the idea is I liked the corners that were available in the first round better than I liked the receivers outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, because Smith and Jigba was my wide receiver one with a bullet. My problem with the receivers is just we had major like size questions with pretty much every one of them except for Quentin Johnston, who we had major like polish questions with, right? So the other guys to me were outside of the first round, or at least that's where I would have put them prior to the draft. I will say there's a couple things with that. First of all, there was a talent cliff at wide receiver. I think Jordan Addison was, he was the fourth receiver that went in the first round, and the Vikings took him, after a string of 3 receivers had gone. The next best receiver after Jordan Addison, I couldn't name to you off the top of my head right now, but you had guys like the Michigan State guy, Jalen Reed, going 50 overall. Right, I don't think Jalen Reed is in the same category as Jordan Addison is as a receiver. So I do think you had that value cliff there from the receiver position. So that makes sense in one idea there. The other thing is, for me with Jordan Addison, I guess my major concern with him is him becoming a true number 1 receiver, right? Like I think the size is going to limit him to certain situations where you have to keep him off of press at the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. And guess what? The Vikings don't need him to be an X receiver who lines up and beats press on a regular basis, because they have Justin Jefferson, who is elite at that, right? He's a very high level X receiver, and they should play him at X. So you can put Addison in a role where he's a complementary player and gets open off of what Justin Jefferson does. And I think you can still even dedicate resources to getting Jefferson open in like route design and stuff like that, and have Addison be not pressed and be able to create things on his own on the backside without route running, right? I have said that I've watched him a little bit. I do think the size concerns come into play, particularly when it comes to getting off of the line of scrimmage. And I do think the speed comes a little bit into play, because you mentioned it, and I think it's still worth bringing up that the best receivers who have run in the 170-pound range historically for the NFL have been super fast, right? You have your Deshaun Jacksons, you have your Hollywood Browns, you have your like Tyreek Hill, who was sub 185, right? Those guys are 4.3, maybe 4.2 speed, right? Some of the best deep threats in the NFL. Jordan Addison is not that type of player. He doesn't really win on the vertical route tree all that often, to be honest with you. Like if you haven't run a pure go route against press coverage, I've maybe seen him win 1 or 2 of those in the handful of games I've watched so far. So that's not necessarily his game, winning with pure speed in the vertical phase. Now, he does amazing, incredible things with route running that gets him open on digs, gets him open on post, gets him open on basically any route in the world that you could want. And I think that's going to be a very solid complementary number 2 who could see a high level of production if teams are willing to dedicate the resources that they did to Justin Jefferson last year, right? And if teams are going to say, oh, now this Jordan Addison is a problem, guess what? That just means Justin Jefferson is more open for the Vikings. So I think I've come around on it in terms of like, maybe ideally I would have preferred to have a corner. And I think with the way the rest of the draft went for us, I think the Vikings are worse for not having taken a corner in the first round. Or at least they didn't improve the defense to the level that they could have, I feel. But with that being said, there are 3 wide receivers that start on the field, right? So even if KJ Osborne can be a bona fide number 2, guess what? Jordan Addison could be a number 3, right? We didn't have the number 3 receiver on the field unless you're an extreme believer in Jalen Nailor, who I like, but I wouldn't trust him to be a wide receiver 3 day 1, or you think Jalen Reagor is going to significantly improve. So there's a lot of justification for drafting a receiver in the first round, and I think Jordan Addison's fit with the Vikings is a good one, even if I have concerns about his ability to be a true number 1 producer in the NFL, because I don't think he needs to be a true number 1 producer. So yeah, with that being said, any final thoughts on Addison, Randy?
No, I sent out some tweets right after we took him and saw, Vikings fans are going to be pessimistic no matter what. I know how it is. I play that game myself. It's fun to doom and gloom. But I basically said the equivalent of, just watch. Come on, just watch what this guy can do. Yeah. And you'll see. So I still stand by that. One thing that stuck out to me while watching him is just this guy is smooth. Yeah. He knows how to play receiver. I've seen him, even though he's not very big, I've seen him catch little slant routes. I've seen him hold on to the ball. One thing I like what he does over the middle. You get a lot of these guys who sort of play that that offensive role that would, thrive with a team, I don't know, like the prime Aaron Rodgers Packers or, the Russell Wilson Seahawks, where they're always outside, getting fade routes and go routes and
Mm-hmm.
comebacks and out routes. Addison can go over the middle, even though he's very small. And I can just picture, Kirk gunning in ball sim. And, last year he had something like a 3% drop rate. So I think you don't really need to worry too much about getting him the ball early. I think he's going to get open. And I think he's going to sort of do, or I think Jefferson's sort of going to do for him what Thielen did for Jefferson when Jefferson first started, which was that was the whole thing after Jefferson's first year. Oh, can he really be the number one? Because when he was playing, Thielen was eating
Mm-hmm.
up things for him. It's all because the Vikings have two great receivers. Okay, then you saw what happened when Thielen was banged up, not playing at all, or playing poorly. Jefferson just kept doing the exact same thing. So I think it could be a smooth transition for Addison, and I give that pick a solid A for me.
Yeah, after what I've watched so far, really the only concerns I have about his game are his size. I think he's a high level route runner. Like, I would say he's a good NFL route runner, but he's like an elite prospect route runner, right? When it comes to NFL prospects, you don't get much better at route running than Jordan Addison is. I do think he has good catch technique. You mentioned that, like, he doesn't really drop the ball in the tape I've seen. I know he apparently had a high drop rate at Pitt, so I'll have to look into that a little bit. But he's also won contested catches. It's just my questions are ultimately frame. Like, I've seen him not be able to catch balls that have been outside of his frame because they were just a little bit too high, right? He's not the biggest guy. So you get a guy that's 6'4", he can catch that stuff. A guy at 5'11" isn't going to be able to. That's not a huge limitation on his game, right? But it's a slight negative. And then the physicality concerns when guys get physical with him, I think he can get beat up with press a little bit. Again, all that being said, I think it's a solid pick for the Vikings. I probably would have taken Deonte Banks, but at the end of the day, I think he's somebody that Vikings fans can get very excited for. So we're going to flip it over to the trades, and I just want to do a quick rundown of the 3 trades that the Vikings made in the draft, right? The first trade, they were at 87, they traded back to pick 102. Then with their next pick after 102, it was originally 119, they traded back again to 134, and then finally they moved up, I believe, for Jacqueline Roy at 141. So I've kind of melded all of the picks together in those trades because and now analyzing them individually doesn't do a ton for me. I think looking at the total market value that Kwesi got and the total value that Kwesi got in the trade is kind of what's interesting from analyzing those from that perspective to kind of see where he's at as a GM, right? So from moving back, he got 102, 134, 141, 164, and 222. Oh, and he also got a 2024 fifth. So now we have 6 total picks in 2024, as opposed to before the draft when we only had 5. And he sent 87, 119, 158, and 211. I created a little trade calculator for myself, basically, and I plugged all of these numbers into it. And Kwesi got average-ish, maybe a little bit below market value for the picks that he was trading back. And by market value, I'm using 2 trade charts, Jimmy Johnson and the Rich Hill trade chart. And I kind of combine them, combine their results to see what they do. So he did lose a little against market value, but he won significantly when you look at the analytical value that he got. And there's an AV chart by Chase Stewart. There's another AV chart that was done from somebody at Harvard. And there's the Over the Cap guys have a chart, and Ben Baldwin also has a chart that does this, right? So in total value, with that analytical value, Kwesi picked up the equivalent of the 97th pick in the Over the Cap chart, or the 108th pick in the Harvard chart, or the Chase Stewart chart, he picked up the 161. Ben Baldwin, he picked up 153. So he's picking up either like a late 3rd, early 4th, or a 5th, 6th, depending on how you go with those charts. And on the market charts, he really lost a 145, which is kind of like a mid 5th, I think, and a 240, which is like almost at the very end of the draft on the Rich Hill chart. So with the combination of all of these trades, right, I think Kwesi generally wins, and you do that when you trade back analytically, right? Just trading up just isn't going to be as valuable as trading back analytically. And I think particularly with the trade back from 87 to 102, whether or not we agree with Mekhi Blackman as the pick with the other corners that were on the board, he was clearly, I think Kwesi was clearly targeting a corner, the Vikings front office was clearly targeting a corner, and no corners went between 87 and 102. So if they are stuck at 87, do they pick Mekhi Blackman? I think they probably do. So I think there is an aspect of that was a win at that trade back specifically, where they got the player that they were targeting. Whether or not that player specifically was a good decision, we can talk about right now. So the Vikings at 102 overall in the third round picked Mekhi Blackman from USC. One thing about Mekhi is that he was a player at Colorado, where he also played with Christian Gonzalez, which is kind of interesting, obviously a first round pick in this draft. But he's 24 years old, so he's an older prospect, right? And that's notable for the Vikings because Kwesi came from the Browns, where they didn't really draft older prospects at all, particularly high in the draft, like the first 3 rounds. And Kwesi's kind of eschewed that in his time with the Vikings, so I just wanted to point that out there. The other thing with Blackman from USC is he's light as well. He weighed in at 178 at the combine. He had a good combine. Otherwise, it still knocked his RAS down. That low weight knocked his RAS down a little bit, but he was just under an 8 RAS, which is considered elite. And if he had a little bit better 40, he ran a 4.47. If he ran a 4.47, he probably would have been bumped up into that category as well. It is notable that he had an elite 10 split, which is something the Vikings, paid a lot of attention to previously. He did also play a mix of man and zone at USC, right? So scheme fit may have been something they were looking for, as opposed to some of the other corners who might have been zone-only corners. And then he was PFF's number 3 graded cornerback in the nation last season. So that's notable, just that they thought really highly of his tape for at least his final year. He didn't have great grades in the years before that. Finally, it was a bit of a reach by the consensus board. A Reese consensus board had him as the number 181 overall prospect, or CB21. There are quite a few corners who were still on the board who, they took him over essentially. By the way, I should mention Jordan Addison was exactly 23rd on the consensus board, wide receiver 3. So we got equal value there as compared to consensus. So I've just kind of given word soup of maybe a little bit of a bio for Mekhi Blackman, but why don't you go ahead and tell us what you know about him, Randy?
Yeah, Mekhi Blackman is definitely someone who was on my radar, mostly for being a PFF darling. He had a couple big highlight reel catches. That USC team was one of the most fun in college football last year. He was definitely on my radar. Probably wouldn't have him graded, quite as a third rounder, even though we took him as a very late third rounder. I think that's one thing people always forget is, there's such a wide range, even in between the rounds. Taking someone at the first pick of the third round, that's basically a second rounder, and taking someone at the last pick of the third round, that's not really a third rounder at all, especially in the comp pick territory. So I think it's a little, people are worrying a little too much about trading back. I think, and about this guy was a third rounder as opposed to a fourth or a fifth. If he's someone we like, I got no problem with it. I probably would have taken him at our next pick after that. I probably would have tried to wait until then, but I definitely, from what I see in the draft calls, stuff like that, I believe he was our guy. I don't think he probably would have made it that far. So, and as far as, trading back, the main complaint people have about that, first of all, people like to complain either way, but if you're going to trade back, it's only because people are mad that you're passing over a prospect. And when you're getting into the late third round territory and there's still players on the board that people are this passionate about, they need to realize the NFL just does not think about them the same way they do. Because if you're at that point, every team has passed on this player 3 times. So, if people are thinking about, one guy I had to really come to terms with that is Northwestern DN with a long name.
Adebawore. Yeah.
Exactly. That was one of my guys. I loved him. He was I had been a first rounder. And I really just had to sit there and not, think to myself that I know better than every single NFL team. Do I think he's a steal for the Colts? Absolutely. But I can't sit there and say, oh, why didn't the Vikings draft him? They had the opportunity to draft him. They had plenty of opportunity to draft him. The fact that they didn't, there was a reason for it. So that's just my thoughts on the trade. As far as Blackman as the player, I think he'll be someone easy to get excited about. We got a very small corner room, not necessarily in size, although he is slight, a frame. But in terms of this, other than Murphy, from the Cardinals, it's really just open ended completely. So if he wants to play, he can play. Corner is a position that sometimes scares me drafting early, especially with the Vikings history of it, just because of how long it takes some guys to get on the field and the learning curve sometimes. But so maybe him being an older prospect might help. Maybe they think him being so battle tested, in such a targeted corner and a 4th year guy, playing college. Maybe they think that'll help him get on the field earlier. Because one of my big things was this year. I mean, we've done our developmental picks. I mean, last year we got a few guys who didn't play at all, granted due to injury or stuff that we can't control. But we've done our developmental picks. I mean, I wanted guys who can play this year, or if they can't play, let's figure out that they can't play. Let's not bet on maybe they'll play next year. So Blackman is someone who fits that mold. If we want a corner who we think can start week 1 maybe or win a job like that, that's not a bad pick at all. Good ball skills, fun guy. I mean, I think the fans are gonna like him. I think he has a good personality. And of course, we can all play conspiracy theorists and say, hey, our first 2 picks are out of USC. Look who's coming out of USC next year into the draft. Caleb Williams. Let's make him happy already. But no, I got no issue with the Blackman pick. Not my highest guy on my board. Probably closer to a 5th rounder for me. But like I said, when you're getting into the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds, if you really think a rounds difference is you're that passionate about, you probably don't know as much as you think because there's reasons all these guys drop, there's reasons guys go higher. Doesn't mean that the GMs are perfect, but there's just stuff we don't know. So I'm completely fine with this pick. I give it solid B minus.
Yeah, so one of the things with Blackman that's interesting to me is the track the Vikings are going with corners. Like, when you talk about man coverage corners, a lot of times people, I think about the big, long corners like a Sauce Gardner, right? Who's going to be able to have length, press up, be really tall, and just stick with guys all throughout the field. I think that's not something that's feasible for every player. Like, you have a guy like Keely Ringo, who I think people might be a little bit disappointed that the Vikings didn't take there instead of Mekhi Blackman, right? Who's tall, fast. I don't know if I don't think he was super long, but he's a big player, right? And one of the issues you had with Keely Ringo is that he's very stiff. If you look at the Patriots cornerback room last year, and I've kind of been hammering this drum a little bit, none of the guys were 6 feet tall. All of the guys were smaller corners. Miles Bryant's a smaller corner. He was, I think, their slot for most of the year. Jonathan Jones is 5'10". He signed a big contract to come back with, or he's staying with them. He was somebody, Vikings fans probably wanted in free agency. He was somebody I kind of bring the table for in the free agency. Jack Jones and Marcus Jones, their rookie corners, were both small. Jack Jones weighed in the 170s, and he was 5'11". He's actually got pretty similar dimensions to what Mekhi Blackman does. And Jones, also 25 years old. So if you're looking for an angle to get hyped up about Mekhi Blackman, I think Jack Jones is the answer, because Blackman was very sticky in coverage. His technique wasn't great. I don't know about Jack Jones's technique. I know he kind of had a tumultuous college career where he got into a little bit of trouble, was kicked out of school, and then ended up at Arizona State before getting drafted. Obviously, Blackman doesn't have anything really negative in his history. It was just he played at Colorado, which is not a good football program at this stage, at least prior to Deion Sanders, at least, before transferring over to USC. And he kind of dominated at USC on tape, right? Like, he was really sticky with guys, and he had great ball skills there. That's another thing. He had a ton of deflected passes. I do agree with you on your general point where, like, we probably get too stuck up on our pre-draft notion of these guys prior to, like, when they're picked in terms of our immediate reaction, right? Because all of the guys we're about to go through with the Vikings were in the hundreds range on the consensus big board, right? Mekhi Blackman was later on the consensus big board, 181, but a guy like Jaquelin Roy was 117. So if you draft Jaquelin Roy at 102 and Mekhi Blackman at 141, you suddenly feel a lot less bad about the order of those two picks, just because the consensus board says, they're they're closer to where they should have been picked. And I think that's not a great way to look at it, but I will say with the age, I do think that's a concern, especially because he didn't start dominating competition until he got to USC at that older age. If you're 24 years old playing on a college football field against a bunch of people who are 18, 19, 20, that's a little bit different when you're that same age playing against those guys. You're more athletically developed than those guys are, so it'll be interesting to see how that carries over. Now, at a high level of college football, you still go up against high level opponents. I'm not trying to say like there's no athletic matches for you when you're an older player, but it is a bit more of a question mark. So with that being said, that doesn't mean I want a developmental guy. It's just, a guy who was not viewed as a high level prospect probably is going to need a little bit of development in the NFL anyway. And my understanding of Blackman, just from listening to people talk about him, is that he does not have very good technique at this point in his career, and that'll need to be worked out, but he is very sticky in coverage. Like he did a great job in coverage despite having poor technique. So hopefully that technique is able to be honed to be a much better player in the NFL from a technical perspective, and that would allow him to see the field very quickly. So with that being said on Blackman, let's move it over to Jay Ward, who is our next pick. He's a versatile defensive back. He was listed as a safety from LSU. We picked him at 134 overall. He was a 3-year starter at LSU. He'll be 23 years old. So again, a little bit of an older prospect, not as old as Blackman. A lot of the youngest guys are 21 or 22 when they're in the NFL. So Ward's athletic profile wasn't awesome, but it wasn't terrible, right? He had a decent 10 split. His 40 was 4.55, which I think is fine for a safety. Like, that doesn't kill me all that much. Like, people have been freaking out about a guy like Brian Branch. I think he ran in the 4.5s too, or Kyle Hamilton running a 4.6 last year. Like, these guys don't need to run 4.3s to be good players in the NFL. Like, the safety position, I think you can get away with a little bit less speed there. The one other thing I mentioned already with Ward, he's light. He weighed in at 180. But again, he's got that versatility as a defensive back. He came in at 182 on the consensus board. He was safety 14 on the consensus board. But the safety class was kind of all over the place this year because outside of Brian Branch, who even people had athleticism concerns with him, right? He went in the second round rather than the first as many projected. There weren't a lot of people that guys liked in the safety class at all. So what do you know about Ward for us, Randy? And give us anything you got.
Gotcha. So what I see for him, first of all, we took him in a pretty standard range. I remember him being someone, who'd always be available in that range in mock drafts. I think NFL had him, as a 4th rounder. The big word for him is versatility. You're getting a guy who can play slot, play safety, probably play outside if you need him. He's not super exciting in terms of any one physical trait, but I think he's someone we're sort of trying to not fill multiple positions at once, but sort of just hedge our bets, because especially since he has good special teams experience, and is just, seems to be a well-respected guy. We lost a lot of good leaders the last couple of years with the team. Guys, this year we're going to be without people like Eric Kendricks on the defense. A couple years ago, I mean, we lost probably the best leader, maybe I've seen the Vikings have in my lifetime, which is Everson Griffin. So we're looking for guys who can step up. So someone leading, the LSU defense sort of as an on-the-field leader is might be a high character pick. I'm seeing him all over the place as a special teams guy. The quote from an anonymous AFC regional scout says he's an absolute dude. He's a guy who people listen to on that defense. Worst case scenario, he's a great special teams guy. So if that's what the Vikings see in him, it is a pretty good pick to make in the 4th round. Special teamers can stick around for a long time. And they can become fan favorites very easily. Looking at guys like Chris Boyd. But maybe we get something more than that. Maybe he becomes, very versatile. I mean, he reminds me sort of in terms of role, someone like Cam Bynum when we drafted, where he was seen as both a corner and a safety on a lot of boards. And Bynum, he may not be great starter material, but he's still, a valuable piece of the defense. Hopefully, someone beats him out for the job this year, but he's still someone who was a good pick, in the 4th round when we took him overall. And I think they're probably looking for a similarly versatile guy here in Ward. And another thing is Ward's a good blitzer. He
Mhm.
led the corners in this class with pressure, which isn't crazy because it's a couple pressures difference between a guy who doesn't get any pressure at corner and a guy who leads corners in pressure. But especially if we want to play the whole Brian Flores is getting his guys game, maybe he sees something out of Ward, can learn from Harrison Smith, be a good blitzer, be a good slot guy. I remember when Mackenzie Alexander, got like 4.5 sacks or something one year. If you
Yeah.
could, and we all joked like, if you extrapolate his pass rushing stats, to a defensive end, put him at defensive end, and he would have gotten 50 sacks that year. So something like that. Could be a fun guy. Uh, Pretty similar to where I would have him as a prospect. I give that pick a solid B.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point with the versatility for Ward, right? That's the name of the game for defensive backs and Flores' defense. Everybody needs to be able to man guys up, and everybody needs to be able to blitz in the box too. Like he kind of asks guys to do everything. And Ward, with that versatility, he has a lot of experience in man-to-man coverage at LSU. He's got deep safety experience. He's got box safety experience, which I think is something the Vikings want to have because Harrison Smith is a phenomenal box safety, but I don't trust Cam Bynum in the box at all, right? You mentioned Cam Bynum there with he was a corner in college, move him to safety. I do think Bynum was more seen as that, cover for safety with a little bit of range, who's got great instincts, has a great read on the quarterback, but he's not somebody I want playing down in the box trying to take on blocks, right? Like we saw how he did trying to do that last year and it didn't work out well at all, really. So Ward is somebody who's a bit more physical, can take on blocks, even if he's a little bit undersized, and you can ask him to line up on the line of scrimmage and blitz like the Flores defense is going to do. I think could be a good addition to this defense. And at this point, I don't really know enough about guys to say, oh, I would like to take this guy. I would like to have taken this guy over Ward. So for me, at that point, it's like, okay, what can this guy do on the Vikings defense, and how does he fit into the general scheme? I appreciate that you brought forward all the special team stuff with this dude, the character stuff with this dude, because that's something that's going to matter. And once you get into day 3 prospects, even if this is the Vikings' third pick of the draft, right, because they made the TJ Hawkinson trade, essentially, special teams matters for these guys making the team. You don't expect a lot of 4th round picks to become starters immediately, or even, depth pieces who play significant snaps immediately. So that stuff can set guys apart in terms of making the team. The next player we're going to talk about is Jaquelin Roy. He's an interior defensive lineman. I've seen some people have him listed as a 3-tech. He might also be slated to play nose in the Vikings defense. He's out of LSU, number 141 overall. He's 22 years old, which is pretty young. He'll turn 23 late in the season. He had really bad athletic testing. Like the other Vikings players on this list, I've seen a bunch of stuff going out that their RASs weren't high. It's either like, okay, Jaron Hall's a quarterback, so I don't really care, or size related, with the exception of Addison, where if Blackman and Ward weren't as small as they were in terms of weight, they probably would have had elite or near elite RASs. And Dwayne McBride didn't test, right? So it's like, we've got a sample of 6 players. What are we doing here talking about this RAS? But Roy was one of the true bad athletes. Now, with that being said, he was also one of the best pass rushers in college football in 2021 per PFF. He had a top 4 pass rush grade, had a ton of pressures that year, cooled down a little bit in 2022. So it was not as good. I mean, I know PFF mocked him in the first round, I think, after the 2022 draft, where it was like, okay, early, take a look at prospects who can make it. So he was kind of a faller throughout the 2022 season as a defensive tackle. But he did end up 117 by consensus, so we got a little bit of a steal. He was 3 technique number 6, and the Vikings do need pass rush on the interior, so he's proven that he can do it in college. I guess, Randy, do you think that can translate over to the NFL level in terms of pass rusher on the interior?
Yeah, I think it can. You stole my talking point about him being a projected first rounder, because stuff like that gets fans excited. You can always play the game. Well, they just used him wrong or something, and we
Mm-hmm.
just got a first rounder in the 5th round or wherever we drafted him.
TJ Clemmings, we
He
got a first rounder in the 4th round. Let's go.
I was unironically a big believer of that because he was right up until the draft process seen as a
Yeah.
top guy. But let's not live in the past too much there. I'll start crying. But I think it's also interesting we didn't quite touch yet. We took two LSU guys in a row,
Yep.
and we if I'm not mistaken, our defensive backs coach was the LSU defensive coordinator in 2021.
Yep, that's correct. Durante
Um,
Jones went from the Vikings to the LSU DC back to the
and
Vikings.
then back. So that's something that's very interesting to me, especially because for both Ward and uh, for Roy, they're guys who had their best year in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So Ward, I think, had 70 plus tackles in 2021. It was looking like a great prospect. As you said, we got Roy, who was one of the pass rushers in the country statistically in 2021, and I guess we have their defensive coordinator. So we already had a good look at them as both character wise and as players. So the fact that we go out and grab teammates back to back again after doing it with USC says something, especially since we have someone so close to them on that 2021 team. It's something to be excited about. This is pretty much exactly where I thought Roy would go. I think people actually maybe underrate the high school and potential pedigree when it comes to NFL draft process, because it's something you would think probably doesn't play a role at all, and I think it plays a role a little bit because you look at the first rounds, they're all 3-star picks. Of course, it's very rare a guy is a 5-star and throughout the whole process stays the course and becomes a high draft pick. But Roy's is someone who was a elite high school prospect, stayed home to go to LSU, played one of the biggest programs in the country, and is now getting drafted in the mid rounds. Maybe they see something that they think they could tap into his 2021 season, or just tap into his potential in general, because he wasn't a great tester, but we're also a little spoiled now in terms of his agility was bad, was just terrible. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of 40 size bench, I think we're getting a little spoiled when it comes to some D tackles, because you see 6'3", 305, ran a 5'1", had 30 bench reps. I mean, that just is a D tackle right there. That's not
Yeah.
anything crazy, good or bad. The reps are actually pretty good. If we're looking at someone to get strengths, get him in the league, get him some NFL protein shakes. And we could see, a guy who improves on his anchor, improves, his hands as a pass rusher. And again, similar to War, a guy who could probably have a little versatility. I mean, someone kind of reminds me of James Lynch, where James Lynch, I think, was technically a D end. I mean, sort of reverse James Lynch, but
Sure.
we sort of had him as a D end when he was drafted, and now he played nose tackle for us last. He was
Yeah.
playing zero tech sometimes. So Roy, we can get someone who maybe comes into the season as a zero
Mm-hmm.
tech. Maybe he ends up being 3-4 D end. Who knows what he's going to end up playing? And I saw for his player comp on one of these sites was Dalvin Tomlinson, which is of course very interesting, because we did just
Mm-hmm.
lose Dalvin Tomlinson. Tomlinson was a great run defender. Roy's thing was probably more pass rushing, but you get a guy pretty similar size and strength. Um, Definitely could not a reach there. I think at 141. I'm not sure what the consensus board says on Roy, but I think I saw him around this range. I wouldn't have been shocked if he went higher, because I was looking at him in the pre-draft, and I
Yeah.
thought someone is gonna think this guy is 2021 is gonna be worth taking a shot on. So yet again, basically you're gonna see when we get to the last pick. I had a couple guys who drafted who are my guys. He's not one of them. I give it another B minus. But I said it on Twitter. I'm a big fan of this draft class for us. There are no picks I really hated. So Roy, I'm completely fine with grabbing him here.
Yeah, absolutely. The Vikings do have obviously needs along the defensive line for interior pass rush, and that can come from zero technique. That can come from 4-eye, which is kind of your 3-4 defensive end that Flores will put on the field. So I think he does have the body type to play any of them in a Flores defense, because the Belichick tree of defenses keeps their defensive line very versatile, right? Like, they will play a 300 guy at 300-pound guy at zero tech, and they'll move a nose tackle out to 4I in some instances just to because they think they got a favorable look for blitzing or something. So I think he can probably do a variety of things in the defense if they have a role for him. And especially, I do like your point about Durante Jones, being there at LSU and both of these guys being on that defense. That probably played a role into the Vikings picking them. So the next pick is something probably Vikings fans were very excited about. I know some quarterbacks went off the board and there was some lamenting, right, from Vikings fans before they ended up taking this guy at 164. I'm talking, of course, about Jaren Hall, quarterback from BYU. He's an older prospect, right? He's 25 years old. He went to BYU. He went on that Mormon mission, lost 2 years of kind of college, lost 2 years of age doing that. If you were concerned about Hendon Hooker's age, who is 25 years old. Hall is only 2 years younger than Hendon Hooker, or 2 months, younger than Hendon Hooker. He's also 25. The thing is, I was concerned about Hendon Hooker's age when we were talking about taking him at 23. As a developmental prospect in the 6th round, it doesn't really bother me all that much. He was also quarterback 8 by consensus, 160 on the consensus board, so we're roughly in the same range. I think at this point in the range, you're not expecting to get an eventual starter quarterback. It's somebody who you like his football IQ, you think he can be a good long-term backup, and maybe you do see some upside for starter potential there, right? But it's certainly not something you're expecting. Like, I don't think Jaren Hall, to me, is in any way going to be slated to be a Kirk Cousins replacement. But I guess I'll open the floor to you, Randy. What do you think about Jaren Hall?
Yeah, so as a prospect, I actually really liked him. I had him. I released to my 5 Twitter followers a list of my top 5 picks, or top 5 favorite prospects under each category, and then 2 additional guys who I'd call my guys, not necessarily my 6 or 7 rankings, but guys who I see something in them that I like, and he was one of mine for quarterback. So in that alone, I make him a big fan of the pick. I'm going to go back to positional just value in terms of what you're getting. I'm actually going to pivot a little and say, even though I do like him as a prospect, I actually don't super get drafting a quarterback here because I got it in round 1. If you want to trade up for one of your guys, I get that. Even round 2, if you want to trade back up for Will Levis or even Hendon Hooker, round 3, I get that. But where we're at with Kirk, I don't really get spending a pick at this point on a quarterback if there's no real feeling that he could be a starter. So maybe they think he can be a starter, but I like Nick Mullins. I think Nick Mullins is one of my favorite backups. He's completely fine, and I do really like Jaren Hall. I was a big. I used to love watching BYU. I watched a lot of college football. And he jumped out to me the first year after they got rid of Zach Wilson, or not got rid of it, should I say, he went second overall. But really, their offense did not miss a beat. I mean, going from a second overall pick to Jaren Hall did not miss a beat at all. I mean, he was just doing exactly the same things, just dropping dimes, hitting deep balls, scoring one-play touchdowns, just all the time. He has some movement to him. The Mormon Mahomes, if you want to joke around there, he can improvise. Did I see him as a future starter? No. Do I see him as a high-level backup? Yeah, sure, but I also don't really see why we're in the market for that when we have so many real holes on the team. One could argue they just, if you find a backup you like, I mean, that could be a guy we keep for a hell of a long time, but that means if he doesn't get cut, we're going to be probably rostering 3 quarterbacks this year, which I don't super get. I'm a big believer for quarterback. I guess go big or go home. And I do like the pick. I do. He was one of my favorite prospects, but not necessarily a guy I had a super eye on for the Vikings. One of my takes throughout the process was, if we pass on a quarterback round 1, we are not going to take a quarterback. And there was a lot of smoke on guys like DTR and even Jaren Hall that we liked a lot of these mid-round guys, and that ended up being completely true. I think we would have taken DTR if he fell, and I think and we clearly took Jaren Hall. So clearly that those rumors were true. They were not smoke screens. Mm-hmm. We did look at the quarterbacks. We did do a lot of research, and we did grab one of them. And I'm a little surprised at that. I actually thought I was sure we were doing our due diligence on first rounders, and I'm sure we were doing our due diligence on everyone. But I'm pretty surprised that after the first couple tiers of quarterbacks went, we still went and grabbed a guy, even though he is a good player.
Yeah, so for me, I guess just to talk a little bit about the idea of drafting a quarterback at this point, right? Like I think I kind of framed it earlier as I don't expect somebody like Jaron Hall to become a long-term starter, but I don't think that's how teams view it when they draft a guy in the 6th round, right? Or the 5th round or the 6th round. I think they often draft guys who they think they have the potential to mold into long-term starters. I don't think the Vikings would play their expectations to set up to say, okay, we're Jaron Hall or nothing next year, right? That's kind of what I was trying to get across. But I do think they think he has it in him to be a long-term starter in the NFL. And I do think it somewhat makes sense to be drafting at least a developmental quarterback every year, because when that guy hits, he becomes incredibly valuable. Obviously, Tom Brady is the example, but Kirk Cousins is another example of a 4th-round pick who it's like, why are you taking a second quarterback in this draft? Well, it turns out that Kirk became a very valuable asset to have taken in the 4th round, right? Quarterback is just such a valuable position that you should kind of keep churning through until you find a guy who wins later in the draft. Dak Prescott, another example of a 4th-round pick. Or Brock Purdy. I mean, I think the jury's pretty much more out on Brock Purdy than many people seem to suggest it is, but like it's such a valuable asset to have a player who was a 7th-round pick quarterback turn into a quality starting quarterback for your team. So I do get the idea of taking a pick, and the Vikings, need to at least have something a little bit to show for what a possible plan for 2024 is, right? Because right now, I don't think you're going to want Nick Mullins to go out there and start 17 games, right? But let's flip it over and move on to the real reason we probably had you on this podcast today. The 7th-round pick of the Vikings, Dwayne McBride, the running back from UAB. I know you love him. He's 22 years old. He's got godly broken tackle metrics. He's got like 0 career catches. He was 127th by consensus, RB11. But hit us with everything you got on him, Randy.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite players in the draft period. Not, in terms of big board. It's not like I had him as a 1st-rounder, but I did have him as a 3rd-rounder, and I had him as my number 4 running back in the entire draft. So right up there with the UCLA guy, just slightly after, the first couple rounds. I am pretty shocked he fell as late as he did. I can see why, not going against the best competition. I'm getting the negatives out of the way first because how many positives they have. But not going against top competition, not catching any passes, sort of just not being super tested against a few in a real NFL offense, and then he didn't test at all due to injury. That being said, I could not be happier about this pick. I think someone tweeted out, how long is it before he's going to be the starter? And I said, yesterday when we drafted him, because I just love him. He just on film, advanced analytics. He runs like Alex Madison. If Alex Madison, was mixed with someone like Henderson out of Memphis a few years ago. I know he didn't end up being a great NFL player, but he's someone who I see a little bit of him on tape, where he's got the burst and just the explosiveness, despite being he's not a small back. Someone like Mitchell from what I'm talking about.
Elijah Mitchell, the 49ers guy?
No. This year Mitchell, very fast guy. I think at ECU maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, ECU Mitchell. People were a little surprised we didn't take him, or surprised that he went undrafted. But I think the difference is he's a similar guy who is just churning out these big runs and his super high yards per carry. But he was like $175 or something. And at running back, that is something I'm more concerned about than we were talking about wide receiver, because you aren't really seeing running back that light ever nowadays. So no wonder he's running so fast. McBride is 5'11", 5'10", 215. That's thick. He's not Derrick Henry, but that's thick. And for a guy, I know we've advanced so far beyond bulk stats, but let me just read off his 3 years of college stats. So last year, he had 1,700 yards, 19 touchdowns on 7.4 yards per carry. That's just like video game numbers. The year before that, bit of a down year. He only had 1,370 yards, 13 touchdowns on a mere 6.7 yards per carry. So a little rough there. And then his freshman year, his yards were down to 430 and 4 touchdowns. But his yards per carry went back up to 9.3. So for his career, on over 480 carries, he averaged 7.3 yards per attempt. That's like Michael Vick or like a scrambling quarterback number. That's just doesn't even happen for running backs. I don't care if you're playing D3. I don't care if you're playing high school. That's just ridiculous. And as far as not catching passes, I've learned to sort of wait on that because a guy who I was not a super big fan of as a pick was Jerick McKinnon, because when we dropped him, we're like, oh yeah, he's our third down back. He'll be the pass catcher. I'm like, he was a quarterback. He didn't play.
Yeah.
He didn't catch balls at Georgia Southern. I'm like, where are people getting that he's going to be our third down back? And sure enough, he's catching balls from Mahomes, in the Super Bowl last year. So, also, come on, he's a running back. It's in the name. You don't need to be a wide receiver back. We have Justin Jefferson. I just love. I love his running style. He's just so hard to bring down. He's so explosive. He breaks hard tackles too. He doesn't break the arm tackles. He isn't just a one cut and he's gone guy. Like, he really runs. I mean, he's one of those guys who I'm a little surprised didn't, after his 1,300-yard year, didn't transfer to a bigger program or something and see what he had as a second or first rounder maybe. He just stuck with UAB and just churned out an unbelievable season. Pro Football Focus, his elusiveness rating was through the roof. Broken tackles through the roof. Just everything about him just screams this is going to be a fun guy to watch. I mean, hey, he's a 7th rounder. I mean, statistically, we're probably likely to cut him this year. But, I'm just hoping to get some good preseason reps, let him bust on in preseason and make it a little harder for them to make their decision. Because I'm a big, big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you pull out a couple of really good things there. 7.3 yards per carry is absurd for a college football player. Like, top tier, Heisman Trophy winning seasons maybe reach 7 yards per carry. And college is a little bit different. Guys do average more yards per carry in college than they do, but that's like some Melvin Gordon, Wisconsin numbers or something like that, which were just absolutely absurd. So, McBride, I have really become a fan of the pick, just seeing people like him. I think also with the catching thing, he has 5 career catches. People are saying that means he can't be a pass catcher. I haven't watched his game yet, but to me, 5 career catches says he wasn't asked to be a pass catcher, right? Like, they weren't attempting to throw him the ball. So it's not something that he can't do necessarily. It's just something we don't have any film of him doing, and we don't know whether or not he can do. So if he is able to do that, I mean, it sounds like he can become a complete all-around back. 5'10", 215 is the perfect size for a running back, in my opinion. That's like Marshawn Lynch dimensions. I like the guys who are a little bit shorter. I'm not a huge, obviously a lot of feature backs are like 6 feet tall in the NFL, which is great, but like the 5'10", 215 is kind of what I want my running backs to be just when I'm watching guys. I think it gives them great balance while also having the stoutness to work through contact. And obviously McBride was phenomenal at that at UAB, right? There's nobody better in college football in terms of breaking tackles or getting yards after contact than what Dwayne McBride did during his time there at UAB. So we're going to flip it over to a couple of the most popular undrafted prospects for the Vikings. The first one was Andre Carter, who was somebody who had a ton of pre-draft buzz. Even by the end of the college football season, he was getting mocked in the first round to some players, right? He's an edge out of Army, I should say. He did not end up getting drafted. The Vikings ended up giving him $300,000 guaranteed. There's a couple of questions with him, right? Obviously, being from Army, he has some weird body type things, right? He's 6'6", but 256 pounds, which is pretty light for somebody who is 6'6", and even as an edge rusher. He did not have great athletic testing, especially from a 40 perspective. He ran a 4.91. With that being said, he did ran a sub 7 3-cone, which is crazy. Sub 7 3-cone is what you want out of edge rushers. That's, the Danielle Hunters of the world run a sub 7-3 cone. So that has me kind of excited about him as a little bit. And then also you get back to the fact he was at Army. You have certain weight goals that you need to hit at Army, right? Where you can't be over a certain weight. So that really hurts football players, especially players of his size. I think the hope is you get him into an NFL weight room, give him a year to develop his body, and he becomes a much better player than what he was, because it's also noteworthy that he did get absolutely annihilated at the Senior Bowl. Like, Army, you're not playing against the best talent in the world, right? So even if he did dominate on tape at Army, you'd like to see him against high-level competition. And when he went against high-level competition, that's the Senior Bowl, he got kind of dominated. But the Vikings gave him $300,000 guaranteed on his UDFA contract. That means they think he's going to make the roster, because that's a pretty big dead cap hit to have for somebody you didn't even think was going to be draftable. Right, who you didn't think you were gonna make, who you weren't willing to invest the draft capital in. But give us what you got on Andre Carter.
Yeah, he's someone where, if you want to go back to the consensus big board thing in NFL thoughts versus fan thoughts, go ahead if you think you didn't love our third round pick.
Actually,
pretend we drafted Andre Carter.
Yeah, so Andre Carter was 102 by consensus. So 102,
yeah,
Mekhi
exactly.
Blackman. Guess what? Maybe we took Andre Carter instead.
Exactly, and even that's like heavily slipped, included in the numbers, because he was at the beginning of the draft process, even this year, like you said, it's not like this is someone like Roy, who at the beginning of last year was seen as someone who could be a high pick. At the beginning of this offseason, he was someone who was considered someone who could have a Tyree Wilson-esque rise, be a Tyree Wilson-esque pick. So sort of they're probably both in a similar range. Wilson ends up going top 10. Carter ends up going undrafted. He's definitely someone who's a project. I'm probably more excited about our other undrafted free agent, or highly ranked undrafted free agent. But Carter's someone, I love pass rushers. He's 6'7", just you can't teach length like that. 40 times concerning. Bench is concerning. I don't really care about bench that much for someone who's 6'7". I mean, I've seen guys in the weight room cheat because they're so short. The 5'5" guys just churning out reps. Come on, man, that doesn't count. It's hard for the lanky dudes to do it. It's easier for someone who's a little stouter. But Andre Carter, there's a reason he was able to put up the numbers he did. And that's another one where I don't, Army doesn't play the best competition, but they also don't play the worst competition. They play, a couple solid teams every year. And he put up 60 pressures his junior year, put up 15 sacks. And even last year, which was his bad year, he still, put up like a over 80 pass rushing grade. And he had a lot less pass rushing reps last year. I don't know if that's because of how they used him, or if he was banged up, or just depending on who they're playing. But his actual pass rush win rate was still pretty high last year. He just rushed a lot less. But Senior Bowl is concerning. Yeah, you brought it up before I could. I forget the tackle, but there's a video of him just getting Michael Orr in the blind side, where he picks up the guy and runs him out of the seat. That basically happens to him in the Senior Bowl. He just was a boy amongst men there, unfortunately. But he's young. He's too, you can't teach that size. Clearly knows how to play football. Since he put up the numbers he did. If I had to guess, I would say he's probably not going to make the team. He might not even make the practice squad. I feel like he's going to be one of those guys where we just cut him, and then fans are like, "Oh, why did we cut this guy?" And then he never does anything, and they're like, "Yeah, that's why we cut this guy." But the fact that we gave him the bonus, and the guaranteed money we did, that gives me more hope, because I would love to see him do something, because he was a really, really fun prospect. Just his size in production in college is just super, super hard to match, no matter what. So obviously, when you come to undrafted free agents, there are no really wrong things to do. I mean, these guys are such long shots anyway. If you're complaining too much one way or the other, you got probably bigger things to complain about. But yeah, I mean, obviously taking the highest ranked guy on most people's boards undrafted, that's going to make the fans happy. And even something like that, there's something to say for that. Something to say for grabbing a guy who, even if there's a 5% chance he becomes elite, that's worth the 95% chance that he doesn't, as far as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the Vikings have strong belief in their ability to develop him into something, and that's why you see the high guaranteed money. Like, he was clearly a sought after guy. The next player we want to talk about, who you already mentioned you're excited about, so I'm looking forward to hearing this, is Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati. He's a linebacker. The knock on him is he's short, right? He's 5'10", but he's a rocked up 230 pounds. Like, it's crazy to get to 230 pounds and play linebacker at that level of 5'10". He was not on the team that made the college football playoff. He went to Miami of Ohio and then transferred to Cincinnati for his final season. He's 22 years old, so he's relatively young. I'm a little bit surprised he went undrafted. I mean, the height does play that factor. He had 9 sacks in last season at Cincinnati, right? So I believe he played off the ball. Like, I don't think he's an edge rusher, to my understanding, but they used him to blitz a lot, and he ran a 4.62 at the combine. He didn't have great agilities, he didn't have great other testing, but the 4.62 is good speed and range for an off-ball linebacker, I think. As somebody who in Brian Flores' scheme, you get a lot of blitzing going on, like, he's obviously proven that he has chops against blitzers, probably against tight ends and running back, as a blitzer against tight ends and running backs, so that's a bit exciting. And then he's also probably got the range and the speed to play off-ball linebacker, even if he doesn't have the instincts yet. So go ahead, Randy, tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, he's someone I probably had as a fourth rounder. The size that's we talked about a little bit with wide receivers, but off ball and pass rushing linebackers are a big one where you're seeing them get lighter and smaller, and that's fine. You get these crazy coverage guys. I mean, you could say it started a while ago with guys like Deion Jones on the Falcons, many years ago, showing what a guy who's pretty small can do at linebacker. But there's still plenty of examples that don't work out. What was the Ohio State linebacker who went to the
Oh,
Jets?
Darren Lee. And
Exactly.
I will say with Pace, it's not like he is light, right? He's short, but he's not light. So he's got more stoutness than a lot of these other guys who are kind of the big, long, rangy, skinny guys. And that it honestly appeals to me a little bit more than taking a skinny guy who might not work out, like who's light and will get swallowed up by blocks. Now, Pace doesn't have the length, right? He's only got 30-inch arms, which isn't great if you want to pass rush against offensive linemen or even take on offensive linemen as blocks. But, obviously the pass rush chops against running backs and tight ends speak for themselves. So I'll let you keep going here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is getting anything out of a guy like this. I think he's a pretty good chance to make the team because we got a wide open linebacker room.
Yeah,
and we got guys who are light and of that same ilk like Troy Dye and even Brian Asamoah, who we're a big fan of. Similar, shorter speedsters rather than necessarily big thumper linebackers. But Ivan Pace just. We want to talk about someone from the Senior Bowl. I mean, I am surprised he went undrafted, but I know, I think the clip that went viral was just like, oh, look at this dude pass rushing at the Senior Bowl. And it was clips of him going against running backs. So it's not like he was going against DN, or it wasn't like he was going against offensive tackles. But, clearly it was like a running back pass protection drill. It wasn't even fair. I mean, he just took a step to either side. He didn't even have to lay a hand. I mean, he was just so unbelievably quick. 20 and a half tackles for loss last year. 9 sacks, and he did it at Miami of Ohio too. He had 7 sacks his true freshman year, which is just unbelievable as a true freshman to do that. I mean, the guy had 20 sacks in his college career as an off-ball linebacker, and that's including 0 in his sophomore year. So, really going to be a fun guy if we can get. I mean, you look at guys like Micah Parsons. I mean, granted, he's huge for a linebacker, an off-ball linebacker. Just his athleticism is just off the charts. But if you are looking at guys, off-ball linebackers who ended up being pass rushers, you also got Hassan Reddick, who was 6'1", 240 or something. I think he was more of a pass rusher in college, but the Cardinals used him as an off-ball guy. And then right towards the end, and then obviously on every team since then, he's been used off the edge. Maybe we're just trying to see what we can get in Ivan Pace as a pass rusher, as a special teamer. He's a really fun prospect. And I always love guys with confidence. I think it was Josh Metellus a couple of years ago. I hope, for my sake of my story, I hope it's Josh Metellus, not the other safety. I think we took like Brian Cole or something out of Mississippi
right.
State. Yeah, and it was one of them. So if it's Cole, I apologize. But If it was Metellus, I remember, at the draft call, and they basically, gave him a chance to be like, oh, I'm so thankful. And he just said like every team before me messed up. Like you're not going to regret this. Like I love
Mm-hmm.
guys with confidence. So if that was Metellus, good on him. He's made the team a few years in a row. He's a guy. If it was Brian Cole, I still love the confidence, but I'm so sorry, he was terrible. But
Yeah.
Ivan Pace, when he went undrafted, he tweeted out instead of saying, oh, thank you to Minnesota for giving me a shot, he tweeted out a picture of announcement and just said on Twitter, "Y'all done fucked up," and that I love a guy who that's how he's feeling after he goes
Yeah.
undrafted. He's like, yeah, okay, every team just passed on me. Y'all let me go to Minnesota. League just messed up. I'm gonna show. I mean, yeah, I love a cocky player. There's some positions I think it's necessary. I think if you're a corner or a wide receiver, and if you don't think you're better than the guy across from you,
Yeah.
even if you suck, I don't want you on my team. There's some positions you have to think you're the best player on the field, and linebacker's one that helps. And I think Pace is going to be. I think he's going to make the team. Which anytime it's a little bold to say it for an undrafted free agent, but I think he's going to make the team. My guess right now would be he makes the team and Carter doesn't. But I love the pickup.
Yeah, I think it's a great pickup. I mean, I think you just look at that production, you look at the fact that he has the range and has that level of production. Like, you have to take a chance on that at some level. I don't care if he's 5'10". And like I said, he weighed in heavier at the combine than Brian Asamoah did last year. Brian Asamoah was 226. He was 231 at the combine. So it's not like he's short and light and going to be able to get completely run off by opposing offensive linemen. Like, he has the stout, and the being 5'10" gives you leverage when you're taking on offensive linemen. You're going to be smaller as a linebacker taking those guys on. So I'm hoping as I watch him, I see examples of him being able to stack and shed linebackers and kind of get, or offensive linemen, and kind of get off blocks in the run game, because that's something that's going to be critical for him at the NFL level. So with that being said, those are the top two billing UDFAs. They're everybody who everybody is talking about at this point. Do you have another guy that you just love that you want to give us a couple sentences on? Elevator pitch.
No one that I love. I mean, those were the two clear guys. But I am a fan of that the nose tackle we grabbed. A position like that that's sort of dying in the modern NFL. I mean, of course, it's amazing to get a guy, like Vita Vea, who can just push the pocket and dominate and, stop the run. But it's one where even guys who are like Jordan Davis, who just are off the charts athletic, off the charts in terms of, film, he still didn't go very high in the draft comparatively to where a guy like that would have gone, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I love taking a shot at undrafted late round nose tackles, because
so that's
you get
Calvin
a guy like Roy,
Avery specifically for people out of Illinois.
Calvin Avery, thank you, yeah, and you get guys like Roy, who could play nose, play 3-tech. We don't know where he's going to end up, and those are the guys who get drafted because they have that versatility. Sometimes it's worth it to have a guy who who just perfects his craft. So grabbing a guy like Avery, true nose tackle, 330 pounds, stout guy, good strength. I think he had like 30 reps or something. Those guys are the type of people who, might not do a lot year one, but, might be a practice squad guy. And then year 2 or 3, all of a sudden he's getting lots of reps. I really do like Tonga, but I think those picks are the type you should be searching for when you're doing late rounders and undrafted free agents. It's more the specialized guys who probably are not going to light people up on the draft board, but are going to probably have a higher floor when it comes to success rate. Because if you get a nice run stopping guy, even as a depth piece out of an undrafted free agent, that's a big hit. And I don't see any reason why he can't be that as soon as this year. I mean, maybe he makes the team, but maybe next year.
Yeah, with players like that, especially, I like that you mentioned specialized role, like fullbacks. I'd never draft a fullback, but if you want to have one in your roster, you'd bring a guy in as a UDFA every year to see if you can replace who you've currently got on your roster. I'm not suggesting replace CJ Ham. That's not what I'm saying. We love CJ Ham here, but...
I am suggesting it. I will never forgive for letting Blassingham get out of Minnesota. Okay. We would have won the we would be on our 10th Super Bowl by now if we kept him. And I know it's only been 3 years, but we'd somehow have 10 Super
All
Bowls.
right. Well,
It would have
we'll
happened.
make an exception for Kari blasting game, but we're just gonna say moving on from CJ Ham is not the official position of Kindred Skulls. Just as a general overarching statement. But what I will say is, the nose tackle position is kind of similar to fullback, where it's like you want to continually bring guys in the case that you can find somebody who can play, 15 to 20 snaps for you during the course of a game that end up really valuable, or be in specific packages against specific opponents. Like that's something the Patriots did very well and continue to do very well under Bill Belichick, is have specific roles for guys and deploy them very well in those roles. So a specialized position like nose tackle could be important there. But with all that being said, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We've run a little bit longer than we like to, although we tend to like to go to over an hour anyway. Let's be honest, it's kind of hard to stop talking once you start. But Randy, it was super fun. Do you have any last things you want to get out before we wrap it up here?
No, I think I'm good. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, like you said, I could talk about football, talk about the draft, all day, every day. I'm one of those freaks who is gonna probably be starting my 2024 mocks pretty soon. But I'm very excited to see the Vikings class. Hopefully, gonna be an exciting season. Follow me on Twitter, guys, and don't judge my takes on there too harshly.
Yeah.
Or do, it's a free country.
Yeah, so for Randy, he's at yes quite on Twitter, 4 M's in that. I am Matt Freese at Fries Football on Twitter. Nick Olson at Nick Olson NFL. Gregg Blake at You've Been Gregged are the two other co-hosts of the show. They will be back. We'll be back after having studied all of these guys and give you super deep dives on players that'll probably be out over multiple episodes. So we don't, clog the feed with a massive like 2 hour plus episode on everybody that we drafted. We are at Kindred Skulls on Twitter. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. Just search for Kindred Skulls there. And with that being said, Skull Vikings.
Goal, baby.
Another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind, and we'll score the